Shooting it raw?
Yes. Shooting it raw.
For me, it's capturing a moment or a memory, something that, kind of speaks to a moment in life or like a breath in your life, just capturing that essence of joy or wonder. I love, you can see these things and imprint them on your brain, which is much more impactful, but sometimes just having that image can spark so much memory inside of you. So my kids get a little sick of my paparazzi like attitude sometimes, when they're like performing in something or they look really nice during a day, but it's just something that keeps that a little bit longer and helps me travel back to that moment in time.
Podcasting remotely can be a real pain. It's quite challenging, but it doesn't have to be. Zencastr has this all-in-one web-based platform and makes the process really quick and easy. That's the way it should be, right? Just focus on the podcast. So let's talk about the quality and the challenge of recording online. So Zencastr gives crystal clear sound and really nice HD video. I know I don't use it, but it's there. Now, that's not even to mention how easy it is to use. Like even for my guests that aren't even that tech savvy. There's nothing to download. They just click on the link and start recording. Zencastr is all about making your podcasting experience easy, and everything from local recording to automatic post-production in the tool. You don't have to leave your browser to get the episode done. Maybe you want to make podcasts as well. I mean, I think it's a great idea personally. Obviously, I'm running one. I think you should make one too. It's easy. Just do it. I actually use Zencastr. If it sounds great, that's because the platform works. And if it sounds like crap, that's because I've done something wrong. But Zencastr really does give me amazing quality for my guests. If you go to zencastr.com/pricing, blah, 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 and enter this promo code, look, it's already long and confusing, and I'll just make it easier by putting the link and the promo code in the episode description. If you do that, you get 30% off your first 3 months. So that's actually pretty sweet. So look in the description for the link and the promo code, and then you get 30% off to start doing your own podcast. Do it. Go for it. Zencastr. Your name, as I have it, is Jessica Lynn Else, but I believe your author name is J Lynn, or how should I say your name?
J Lynn Else. Yep, that's kind of what I go by. You can call me Jess. It's not a big secret. I typically don't go by Jessica because every child born in the late 70s was either Jennifer or Jessica. So
Got it. That's interesting that you should say that.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. No, because for some strange reason, something came up about a year ago, and I have no Jennifers in my life.
Okay.
The last Jennifer that I've met was in high school, maybe. No Jennifers. But for some reason, I just started calling everybody, male or female, dogs, cats, birds, Jennifer. Everybody was Jennifer.
Really?
And it was a thing to make my daughter laugh, right? And
Sure.
so at first she's just like, stop it. That's so dumb. What is Jennifer? But after a year of doing it, she's totally down. Everyone's Jennifer. So,
Oh, really?
so it's interesting that you say that there was a time where I guess that was a really popular name. And it's like, oh, okay.
It was. In college, I actually roomed with 3 Jennifers. So
What?
I'm serious. So I pick up the phone, they'd be like,
Wow.
Jennifer. I'd be like, nope, you got the Jessica. So yeah, I've been surrounded by those names.
Okay. Well, on that buoyant note, we're going to get to know you. Of course, thank you so much for joining me. And then, look, let's just dive into your first photo.
Sounds great. Thank you. Yes.
So this one's called Hobbit Little Library. Okay,
Yeah.
So it's basically, I think these things are like outside of your house, It's one
Mhm.
of these things where you leave a book, pick a book, like it's like this maybe communal thing where people walk by can drop a book off and grab a book,
Yeah.
and it's very sweet because it's a very close cropped photo, and so you see the grass. It looks like a Hobbit house. It totally like there's a little the door is kind of circular and it's nice made out of glass. You can see inside, and there's grass all around, and yeah. So walk us through like why this photo?
So I was at this kind of local community, kind of arts event, selling some books, and we just happened to see this little library. And, little
Yeah,
libraries are kind of popular now. I would love to build one. You can either like purchase one and then register it, and then you get your little library on a map where people can come and find it.
register
So,
it.
yeah,
What?
there's like littlelibrary.org, and you'll get like a
Oh,
little plaque that you can put on it,
that's
and you'll have your own
awesome.
unique number. So we saw this and we're like, not only is it a little library, it's a Hobbit library. And this is
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm-hmm.
amazing. So some people make their own. And just having, like you said, that grass on the top, the colors and everything, it really evokes
Yep.
this sense of fantasy. So I was like, I need to get one of my books and put it in there. And
That's awesome.
I love pulling up those maps and just going around town and dropping off books and taking books and exchanging books. And
Amazing. I
it
love
is
it.
just such a fun little thing to do, and it's also that a way to share the love of reading because it's like, I really enjoyed this book. I'm going to leave this, and hopefully someone else will get to enjoy it.
So where in the world are you? I have no I
Oh,
don't know anything about you. So
yeah.
where are you? Like where is these little libraries? Where can they be found?
I'm in Minnesota. So
Minnesota.
they are just kind of all around other people's houses, all around like my community. Like I said, I would love to build one. I really want to build one that's like an R2D2 library
Okay,
because
okay, okay. Yeah.
I mentioned I love
Hilarious.
the Hobbit library, and I think it would just be fun. Some people actually set up this whole like little reading station outside of them. They'll have a bench, they'll have like
Oh,
dog
cute.
treats. Some have
So it's
like
books.
it's just books, and then you can sit with your pet and read. And I think it's just a fun little spirit of community just to get outside. And a lot of people will stay indoors and read, but it's like, get outside, enjoy the day. We've had 50-degree weather over here, which is amazing right now because,
Right, right, right.
right now it's
Wait,
still
wait,
a
wait, wait,
little
wait, wait.
chilly.
I'm on the metric. I'm Canadian. 50 degrees is was like 20 degrees Celsius. I have no idea.
I don't know either. Um,
What?
let's just
We
say
suck.
let's just say it's winter going into spring,
Nice.
and we get very cold.
Nice. Okay, well, look, I'm from Montreal originally, and yeah, it's full on. Like I know
Yeah.
about the winter for sure.
So yeah, I just think it's so fun.
So there's a really great book by Hélène Cixous, Cixous, and it's
Okay.
called Three Steps on the Ladder of Writing. And she really
Oh.
talks about the sort of the philosophical and very much talks about the deep, profound territory of becoming an author, especially as a woman, right? And
Hmm.
so, with that in the background in my mind, when I start talking to other authors, I'm always curious about, well, how did you fall into writing? Like, what is your life that dropped you in like that into being dedicated to writing books?
Sure. Yeah, that's a really good question because I think also I'll bring this up in the time I grew up. I was a big science fiction fantasy fan. Some of my first movie experiences were like E.T. or Star Wars Return of the Jedi. And for instance, with Return of the Jedi, Princess Leia was out there. She was tough. She could be in the battle with the guys. She wasn't cowering in fear somewhere, needing to be rescued, per se. She was
Hmm.
in there in the thick of it. And then when I would watch subsequent movies, the girls were typically very screamy. Like if you watch the first Batman movie, it's a great example. Vicky Vale screams all the time. It annoyed me
Okay.
to no end. I'm like, I don't even think I can
Right.
watch this movie.
Yeah.
So growing up with that, there weren't many books that had strong female characters or characters that had some depth. Like they were either
Right.
really aggressive to set their place in this, or they were really, as the 90s went on, they were bookish smart. They were that book smart person. They
Okay.
usually had like one character trait that really defined them. I was sitting around watching a movie and I noticed there were two male characters and two females who were kind of the leads. And the two male characters are the ones having all the magical fun, and the
Hmm.
two females are the ones getting them in trouble, turning them in. It's like,
Right.
I got so frustrated. I'm like, you know what? I need to get going on this book. I had this idea
Oh,
percolating,
okay.
and it has four female leads. They're all friends, and they go on
Hmm.
this journey together, and I wanted them to be the ones to tell the jokes, to make mistakes, to do the fun things, to discover more about themselves. I wanted to have those characters out there, um, just because I felt readers needed that. And that's
Okay.
I don't mean to like put down any other works that are out there, like that people have grown up with. I read the
Hmm.
Dragonlance Chronicles, and they had some great female characters in that. But I just really wanted to have more female leads really driving the story, interacting, and really learning and growing themselves. So that was kind of that like kick in the pants I needed to really
Hmm.
finish that first book and really go and seek out a publisher to get this out there, because
Mm.
I just wanted to have those characters for other girls when I was growing up, and I couldn't find them.
Right.
Like on the playground, it was like, oh, hey, I want to be Princess Leia, but I want to be Princess Leia. What other girls are there to
Right.
play in Star Wars? Oh, okay, I'll be Princess Leia's cousin, stuff like that. So,
Many people will talk about, well, I wrote the book that I wish I could have read, I could have found.
hmm,
The kind of story I wanted wasn't out there, so I kind of pursued that in a way, discovered it.
yeah,
So, how did that story emerge in your? So, okay, so here's what's really fun about the podcast. This little cluster of people. So for a while, I was getting people around climate change. And then I had one author, and her agent introduced me to a bunch of other authors, and I think you're one of them. And you said you're in Minnesota, and I don't. I'm just like Minnesota, Minnesota. And then just last week, Kelly Florence, I
yep,
think, is
yep,
from Minnesota.
yep, she is.
So you fell into writing, but you wrote the book that you wish you had had as a child, or what as a girl growing up. But was this story in your head for a long time, or was it essentially like you woke up and you said, "Well, that's the story, that's it," and then it was just a question of capturing it?
Yeah, I've had it both ways, to be honest. I was writing a short story for this contest, and all of a sudden I woke up after sleep and I was like, "Oh my gosh, I had this dream of a human zoo on an alien world. That's what I'm going to write about for this,
Okay.
competition." So I've had that happen once, but the
Okay.
idea was kind of percolating for a while. I had the basis, and it kind of focused on wishing wells. It didn't have that Arthurian take to it yet when I'd first
Mm-hmm.
developed it. That came a little later, because I also have this. I love history, especially ancient history. American history doesn't fascinate me so much. Like ancient Egyptian history just fascinates me. And so bringing in some of the women from King Arthur's time, because you get little tidbits
Mm-hmm.
of them, like the Lady of the Lake or Lady Morgan Le Fay, I was like, I want to learn more about them. So
Mm-hmm.
gradually they came into the story. And as I was writing it, so you had mentioned Kelly. We have a local writing community. And at the time, I was writing about ancient Egypt. I was writing about King Tut's wife. And I was in the writing group. And I met one of Kelly's friends, who I knew first. I learned about Kelly through her. Her name is Meg. And
Mm-hmm.
she was being published through this publisher based in Houston, Texas. And she's like, "Hey, for your new series, you should contact them. They're a women-driven organization. They're just starting out. They're looking for more authors." So I contacted them and sent them kind of my pitch for my book. They asked
Mm-hmm.
for kind of the manuscript, so I sent it, and they're like, "You know what? I like it, but we need to make these changes." And so I
Mm.
spent a weekend just going through the whole thing, beefing it up and kind of identifying some of the maybe issues they saw in the story that needed more development. And I sent it
Mm-hmm.
back, and they were like, "Okay, let's run with it." So
Oh, wow. Nice.
that's how. So I got through the publisher through a friend, and then through that friend, of course, I met Kelly. And yeah, it's like that little interconnectedness that helped me get to this point today, where now I have 3 books in that series. So I have a trilogy done about
Okay,
these
nice.
characters in this world. So it's been a great journey that has come about. Sometimes things just need to sit in my head for a while until I really can put it down to paper.
Sure.
So
Sure.
that was with this series, yeah.
Okay, so for somebody who's listening who's not used to writing or the sort of the writing process, how long would you say it takes for you to make a book for your trilogy?
You really have to come up with these kind of habits. You have to really commit yourself. You need to sit down, carve out some time and do it. So my first actual book that I wrote took a year to write. Um,
Mm.
so now, I mean, it's a little bit shorter. So there is this event in November called NaNoWriMo. It's National Novel Writing Month. And your goal is to
Mm.
write a couple thousand words a day. So
Okay.
it's like this serious sprint, and you make, little writing buddies, and sometimes, like with your local communities, if you can find a local writing community, it's huge. It's great.
Oh,
They're
wow.
very supportive. They'll have like little sprints where they're like, okay, let's
Yeah.
let's write 10 minutes and then we'll take a break. And so when I would participate in that, of course I'd get the novel done, but it would just be, like a
Wow.
marathon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So then you go through it and you develop it more. So I would say that's kind of cut the time in half, but conversely, you do have to go through the developmental editing process, which is
Yeah, for sure.
it's actually fantastic. It's really helped bring out some of those ideas I had that I didn't quite
Mm-hmm.
hit.
Mm-hmm.
Because let me tell you, I'm not the best at telling jokes. Like, I see the punchline in my head, but I don't
Okay.
communicate it well, and then I start laughing before I even tell the punchline. So it's kind of like that. You have it in your head, but sometimes you don't communicate it as clearly.
Yeah.
So that's what that developmental editing is about, is really bringing everything
Yeah.
forward so readers can connect with it like you do.
Absolutely. Well, I think for anybody who does writing, at some point you have to let go of your ego to feel that when somebody criticizes the writing, you don't feel like, oh, they're criticizing me, like I'm a bad person. No, 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 no. Like the writing is a thing that's independent, and
Hmm.
that actually the first draft is important,
Yes.
but you have to edit. Like it's all editing and it's all refining and all this stuff for sure.
Yeah, you have to be able to take that feedback. And
Hmm.
sometimes it can read a little harsh, but you just have to remember it's there to make your story better. So
Yeah, for sure.
read it and then do what you can with it and develop it. And always remember, at the same time, it's your novel. If you disagree with
Yeah,
what maybe someone's saying, let them know
yeah.
why and see what else you come up with. So,
Or stay with what you did. Like
yeah,
it's your world, right?
it's my world. So, yeah.
Yes. So, would you like to go on to the next photo?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. So this one's called "Fierce Females and Dragon." Is that the title of the book,
No, no.
or is that just no? Okay, okay. The image is of four females in silhouette.
Mhm.
They're obviously friends because there's that. They're in silhouette, so you can't see their face. You don't see, but the sort of the stances are all action stances, and they're in the foreground. And in the background is, I mean, this image is a little bit pixelated, so hopefully I can get a slightly better quality one.
Sure.
But in the background is this illustration of a very gothic looking castle with a dragon flying behind and around with a like kind of like this afternoon light or morning light or something, cloud cover, very dramatic mountainscape. It looks like Wales in my non-Wales accent, but
Oh,
so So do tell.
So the background is actually part of the cover for book 2 of my series. We,
Nice.
we did have those silhouettes in there at first, but it just didn't have the same depth as kind of the whole background.
Mm-hmm.
So I just asked for that special image with the four females kind of in the front because I really like kind of the what it evokes when you look at it. You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
this is going to be a
Yeah.
cool adventure. And I liked having the different action poses. So when we are working on the covers with my publisher, the cover artist, he asks different questions. What's the feeling you want to get? What are some of your characters like? What
Mm-hmm.
colors or what elements do you want in there? And I was definitely like, I want a dragon because there's a dragon in
Mm-hmm.
book 2 that
Yeah.
you come to meet. So
Right.
I just really like the aesthetic of this because it really portrays what I want to get across.
Mm-hmm.
That
Mm-hmm.
cusp of an adventure, these friends together ready to make that first step. And I find the image pretty exciting. I like it. I really enjoy it. And like I said, that's cover for book 2. So
Yeah. What's great also is that, do you ever run into a kind of a snobbery or kind of a bias against, because fantasy has a certain, it has a certain aesthetic position, has a certain tradition, all this stuff. And you don't have to love everything. And some people just really don't like fantasy. But how do you talk about how going into this kind of part of the bookstore or the library where you're writing fantasy, which is traditionally not filled with strong female characters, and these females look like they're young, well, young, they look like they're, in their teens to 20s, right? So it's not a very cliched association. So talk about, like, you have this impulse in your body, like, oh, I want to write this book. This is the feeling I want to put out there. What were the sort of feelings or people or situations where you've run into where people have said, oh, wait a second, what is this?
you know I've been pretty blessed with my covers. My second and third cover have definitely really been amazing. My first cover is really nice, but I don't think it clearly defines what's going to happen in the book. It kind of has
Okay.
those elements, but I think book 2 and book 3, their covers really kind of tell what you're gonna get in the story. They kind of
Right.
evoke that sense of fantasy. And
Mm-hmm.
I was recently at a used bookstore. There was this person who was pitching some of the books. She's like, "Oh, well, here's our fantasy book." And I was like, "Well, what are the female characters like?" I mean, that's my first question
Mm-hmm.
is
Right.
I want to have those interesting characters. And so, I mean, let's be very honest, we do judge books by their covers. I love pretty book covers. We all love pretty book covers. You see it all
Sure.
over
Sure.
all over Book
Well, you
Talk.
get engaged visually, for sure.
Yes. You're like, "Oh my gosh, that's beautiful. I want to know what's going on." Basically, that's what I want to get across is I want someone to see my book cover and be like, "I want to know what's happening in that book.
Yeah.
There is a castle, there is a dragon. Let's go there." So, I
Mm-hmm.
haven't had so much the negative kind of response yet. I've gone to a lot of kind of local places and most people are very interested in talking about the writing process. "Oh,
Yeah.
you're from here. That's great. How did you get into writing? How did you get this
Right.
published?" Things like that. So I've had a lot of positive feedback with it. And I really do love pretty covers and I was so happy
Right.
when I saw these covers. I was like, "Oh yes, that's what I want to put out in front of me is these are beautiful covers."
So what is the name of the trilogy?
So it's the Awakenings trilogy. The first book is Descendants of Avalon. The second book is The Lost Daughters of Avalon,
Mm-hmm.
and then the third is Destiny of Avalon.
Got it.
So it's just kind of this building series of these teenage friends who stumble in to this fantasy world. They make this wish in an old-looking wishing well, and it ends up tipping the balance of power in this land where these coins fall. There is this evil wizard who's collecting them,
Hmm.
using people's wishes, their hopes and dreams to reforge Excalibur so he can cut his bonds
Hmm.
from this world, escape, and try and take over the world again. He wants his power back, but he
Right.
is trapped in this castle and he can't cut himself free yet. He wants to cut his soul free from this world. So they
Mm.
have to go and find their wishes to keep them safe from this wizard who wants to use them for his own personal gain and his own power.
Right.
So they are all of a sudden thrust into this world.
Yeah, like themes that are very much about life in Minnesota, from what I hear.
Well, that's an interesting take. No, I just,
I'm just kidding. So it's always important for me. It's interesting to know who is the person. So what is the environment that you grew up in as a kid who gravitated to this part of storytelling?
So when I was younger, kind of preschool, early elementary school, we lived up. So I live right now in southern Minnesota. We're kind of plains. It's not super exciting, but in northern Minnesota they have all these beautiful trees. They have these white
Okay.
birch trees. We used to live in, well, it's a trailer. Let's be honest. It was trailer.
Okay.
We lived, but it
Sure.
was in the middle of all of these trees in this forest kind of area, and I loved it. We could walk outside, we could pick strawberries or raspberries, and there's just this sense of like, what's beyond the tree line? Like, what could be hidden there? Are there
Right.
fairies?
Right.
Are there monsters? I mean, sometimes there were bears, and we had to stay inside because there was a bear outside. But
Well.
like,
Well, okay, so my wife is from British Columbia,
hmm
like a few hours away from Vancouver. And that's like the big mountains, big trees. Everything's huge, right? It's like
yeah,
you've got the ocean with the orcas, and you've got the seals, and you've got the bears, and you've got the cougars, and you've got the owls killing cats. All the like it's full on, right? And also the trees there are enormous. You'll have
hmm
trees that are like 150 feet tall or something. And it's just incredible forest. And when you describe growing up in this place where the woods are there and there's this kind of, as a child or as a kid or whatever, even growing up, there's a kind of magical connection of what is out there. Like for in a place like British Columbia, it's very easy to sort of imagine these like fairies or this weird animated life beyond just humans, right?
yeah.
So that was something that awakened in your head. Why does that manifest though in this idea of, well, I need to get the story out because like essentially writing is a very lonely process. But I guess when you're in a group, you guys kind of feed off each other's energy.
hmm
I don't know Minnesota at all, but I picture open space, then lots of snow, and that quiet of when the snow just tamps out sound.
hmm
So, how does that scene fit into your process as a writer?
I kind of wanted to evoke, like you'd mentioned, that sense of wonder when you look out, like with British Columbia. That sounds like amazing. Like you're surrounded by these giant mythical, like elven trees or something. I wanted to evoke kind of that sense of fantasy before we actually stepped into the fantasy world. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just always captured this comfort for me, and I've just always loved going up there. And I think it's just those childhood impressions that really started me on this road to fantasy and loving reading science fiction and fantasy, because I love that sense of possibility, that
Yeah,
anything can be out there. Like with space, it's infinite. What's
yeah,
out there? I can't imagine we
yeah,
are the only planet with sentient
sure,
beings on it, because space goes on forever. And just
yeah,
like
yeah,
in the woods, it's such a beautiful quiet, like you said, that the snow does kind of dampen things. Yes, everyone goes inside, everything's quiet because it's freezing
mm-hmm.
cold. And yeah, you just get that sense of peace, and also curiosity. So that's what's
Okay.
always kind of stuck in my head. And yeah, that's why I started it up in northern Minnesota instead of where I live now in the southern area, because I
Mm.
just love the environment. So
Are the beaches much nicer in the South?
no, I mean,
You should see your face. You're like, okay, I'm talking to an idiot.
no, I'm just trying to think because I'm like, most of ours are man-made, so they're
Yeah,
not
yeah, yeah. No, I got it.
nearly
I
as
got
cool
it.
as some of the
I
ones
like I
up
like
north.
pretending that I'm totally ignorant, so it's good.
We do have so many lakes, but not down here.
Yeah, of course, of course. Okay, well, you want to move on to the next photo?
Sure.
Boom! There we go. Okay, okay. So it's a not a yeah. This is great. Okay, so it's a photograph of. I mean, it could be. It looks like rough fabric, but it looks
Hmm.
like it's basically this beige field that looks quite textured, and in it, in the stitching, there's just like let's see, a kind of Princess Leia on the right, and another kind of I don't know other
It's
figure,
Ray.
female holding a
Yeah,
staff. Ray, of course, Ray. Sorry. And it
that's
says
okay.
a woman's place is in the resistance, and of course, anchoring it in Star Wars. Is this a cushion? Is this a blanket? Is it? There couldn't be a blanket. But
It is something that my friend, so during the pandemic, she learned to cross stitch. And so she
there you
made
go.
these little cross stitch pictures for us. She framed them and then she gave
Mm.
them to us for Christmas. And it was kind of fun because she was like, we have kind of a group of four of us. And she'd be like, hey, what do you think this person would like? I know she likes Star Trek, but what characters do you think would be best?
Ah,
Tapping into my
yep,
nerd. And so this really just kind of embodies what, first of all, I want to get off in my writing. And second of all, just embodies what kind of started me on this journey is, like I said, the Star Wars, Princess
yep,
Leia, women having agency and just stepping up and being in the thick of
yep.
it. It means a lot to me because it also reminds me of how writing can be a lonely journey if you let it be. But,
Mm-hmm.
these friends have really helped me through the ups and downs. Like when you see that bad review come through and you're like, oh my
Yeah,
gosh, I'm the
yeah.
worst writer ever. I should just stop what I'm doing.
Right.
And when I have an event or if I go somewhere and sell books, they show up and cheer me on. And it's
Oh, that's
just
so nice.
that reminder that there are people out there. You are not alone. And as a writer, you
Yep.
shouldn't be alone. Find
Mm.
that group that helps, that can be your cheerleaders when you are stuck in like a writing block, who
Yep.
can maybe give you some feedback on your writing and really help you get to that next level. So I
Mm.
love this because my friend handcrafted it for me during
Yeah,
the
it's great.
pandemic when we were all
So
separated,
sweet.
and then gave it to us all just kind of as a reminder of that interconnectedness and whatnot. So I have this sitting up, on one of my bookshelves, and just I love looking at it. It's just fun. It makes me smile every time.
It's super bright. It's super fun. It's like when people who want to see the image or to see this sort of illustration on with fabric or cross stitching, check it out because it's got a cartoony aesthetic, which is kind of nice, and also this idea of a woman's place is in the resistance. Now, how do you feel about what today is like in terms of the kind of conversations or the consciousness or perceptions or what's allowed and what's how do you feel in terms of the limitations that are there or barriers?
Yeah. I feel like a lot of barriers are really kind of being slowly pulled down, just kind of like
Okay.
little brick by little brick. We see so much more diversity in the writing. You see so many more characters, sexual orientation, colors, all this stuff. We're finding so much more in mainstream writing, and I find it so exciting because,
Mm-hmm.
like I wanted to see more female characters in my work. So many other people wanted to see themselves in things as well. And we've been so dominated by, certain aesthetics that it's just so
Mm-hmm.
exciting to see how this industry is kind of changing and growing and really becoming more inclusive of all
Mm-hmm.
different sorts of people and places. And I love finding these books, say, about that are based on African folklore or whatnot, that really bring in a whole other cultural aspect that I feel very naive about. So
Mm.
I think it's really exciting where we're going. I love that there are so many of these books out there, and it
Mm-hmm.
gives so many new people a different way to share their voice. When people
Yeah.
ask for writing advice, sometimes I'll say, you are the only one who can tell your story. You're the only one with your
Yep.
voice, your perspective, who can share this moment, this event, this feeling. So get it out there because you're the only one who can tell it. And it's really
Mm-hmm.
nice that we have so many other people being able to tell their story too. So
Yep.
I'm
Yep.
I'm always excited. I'm always on the lookout for new books that are coming out.
Yeah.
So
Every once in a while, it is that feeling of excitement when you see something that kind of shocks you to go like, I so didn't expect that, especially as an author. Basically, it's wherever your mind could possibly fall into and go into, and you're bringing the reader along. This idea of pushing your imagination and expanding your imagination. So it's true, like having real diversity just makes the stories so much more interesting. It's kind of like, I love that feeling of seeing something and go like, I could never have imagined that the story would go this way, you know? And I
yeah,
find that, yeah, that is really great.
I saw this really amazing TikTok, and I love blending different elements. And this person was showing she was on point shoes, but then she stepped down and her point shoes also had taps on them. I'm like, you're
Okay.
doing
Okay.
ballet and tap. My mind is
Amazing.
blown. So that's kind of an example of like how I love this blending that's happening. I
Yep.
never would have thought
Yep.
of that. It's brilliant.
Yeah. So I think to really kind of push the boundaries, yeah, you could try psychedelics or whatever, but to actually consciously be able to sort of push the boundaries of your own experience and your own imagination is very difficult. And your biography is in between the lines of your text,
Hmm.
of your books. So this might be a very strange question, and hopefully it'll be hard to answer.
Oh, okay, okay.
But where would I find the Minnesota in your books?
Oh, okay. That is a good question. Let me think. Well, first of all, the whole opening setting, of course. And we also have, I don't know if you've heard of Minnesota Nice or
Nope.
Minnesota Passive Aggressive Nice. Like we're
Oh, that sounds very Canadian.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So we're very agreeable, but
Yeah.
sometimes, we don't like to get into a lot of arguments. So you'll find many of my
Hmm.
characters sometimes kind of shy away from getting angry. And I think that's where some of that Minnesota nice comes in. I have one character, Wit, she's very passive to start, and she just kind of wants to agree and go along with the flow. We don't want to make waves. We just want to, find out what's happening. And eventually she begins to speak up more and find her voice and find her strength. But, at first, here in Minnesota, it's all, like I said, Minnesota nice. We want to
Okay.
be very open and pleasing and, like I said, not making waves and just wanting to make everybody happy. So it's about finding that inner strength.
Right. But it's also the stuff of socialization, right? Like
Hmm.
you can't, if you're always abrasive,
Yeah.
that's a certain type and a certain way. But unfortunately, like, is that really the best way of having I mean, it's a difficult environment. And so if you had conflicts of, of strong personalities, it's
Hmm.
kind of like, I'm only going to see you once every 2 weeks. I don't want to necessarily hurt you.
Well, let me tell you, I hate conflict. It
Okay.
makes me cringe. I try and shy away from it, and I think I get it from that Minnesota nice. And I think also
Okay.
it's like sometimes you just need to say your opinion, and it's okay.
Right.
They might not like it, and that's okay.
And here's what I love about you saying this, because the image framed right next to your face as you're talking about this is a woman's place is in the resistance. So what is the resistance? Is the resistance passive aggressiveness? Like, what is the resistance? Is it hard power? Is it soft power? Like, how do you understand what the resistance means?
I think it's really taking a stand finding what something means to you and really sticking to it. So,
Right.
like we are against this evil superpower blowing up Alderaan. We are going to stand against that because
Mm.
it's right for humanity and the universe itself. We're trying to preserve life, and so it's really finding that place where you take a stand, and that's okay. And I think
Mm.
sometimes it's hard for people to just be like, you know what, your opinion is different. That's okay. I can still be
Yeah.
friends with you if you like this thing and I don't. So I would
Mm.
say with that picture, finding, a woman's places in the resistance, it's about finding your voice and letting yourself
Yep.
be heard.
I love that the expression is like a half smile. It's very kind of cheeky. Yeah, I'm holding a gun. I'm holding it's kind of cheeky.
Yeah,
It says more about your friends.
sense of humor.
Okay. Okay. You want to go to the next photo?
I will mention one thing. I love how you're mentioning the
Yes, please
faces.
do.
My friend who made that, she writes horror, just so you know. So
Ah, of
some
course.
of that cheekiness may come from that horror aspect.
Yeah.
Like you just don't know what I'm gonna do, and I'm gonna surprise
Ah,
you every time. So it just made me think of that when you mentioned it.
yeah. Well, Minnesota's churning out the horror
Yeah.
aficionados. I love it. Ah, great. Great. Okay, so in this photo, it's indoors in a
Hmm.
very large. It looks like a hockey rink. I guess it's a covered. You've got like with the steel kind of girders on the top. This could be a hockey rink because you're all on this kind of concrete.
I love how you think that because I'm in Minnesota, but it's a convention center. Thank you.
Okay, convention center. Well, okay. Look, I'm from Montreal, so
Okay,
it's
hockey,
like,
hockey.
yeah, that's just how it is.
I love that.
Okay, convention center. They have convention centers in Minnesota. And I'll note taken. All good. So it's a large convention space. There are a lot of stands, a lot of booths, lots of people. I think there's somebody. No, originally I thought somebody was dressed up in cosplay, but nope. You're standing in the middle of the image, facing. You have a tag on your around your neck, so it tells me that you're one of the presenters, or is that just your pass? Nope.
That's my vendor
And
pass. Yep.
got it. There you go. And right behind you is a larger than life size Iron Man statue, sculpture, kind of standing with his like well known sort of stance of kind of putting his hand forward, and it's right behind your head, and you're facing the photographer, and you're smiling. Okay, and this one's called Nerdy Mom. So own it.
I am so gonna own it. So I brought this photo up because, it took me a long time to really let myself admit to the world that I'm a huge nerd.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Mm.
when I was in high school, being a nerd was not cool. So
No, of course.
I was a huge fan of Star Trek The Next Generation. And
Yep.
every summer, me and my parents would take me and my brother up to Star Trek conventions. They even
Okay.
made us Star Trek costumes. They had someone make us a costume. So
So your parents were enablers. Got it.
they sure were nerd enablers. And I had this full uniform. I was a lieutenant commander. I was in the yellow because I was going to be
Oh
the
wow, wow,
security
wow.
chief. My brother,
Oh, is that what you're wearing in this photo
well, it's
as
close.
well?
It's not my actual. It's a different one I bought. My brother was the
Yeah.
captain.
Right.
So he had the red, and we would go up and we'd see the celebrities we'd see on TV. We'd get autographs.
Oh wow.
But if anybody found out I did that, I think I would have died in high school. Like it
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
you know, death to my whole. I mean, let's
Mm-hmm.
be real here. I was in band. I was not the cool person in high school.
Mm-hmm.
But what reputation I had, I did not want it destroyed by my love of Star Trek. Like I just feared
Sure.
that. But
Wow.
looking back, I'm like, why? Why did I really care? Because so Star Trek Next Generation, it may sound really weird, but it did help me get through. We had moved from northern Minnesota to southern Minnesota. The population change was when we were living up north. there was like 200 people in our town. When we moved to where I am now, there was 70,000. So, as
Okay,
you can
okay. So that's a
imagine,
massive change. Yeah.
massive change. I really did not take to the change very well. So, I didn't make a
Mm.
lot of friends. I didn't really enjoy school.
Hmm.
Watching Next Gen kind of helped me get through some of that, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. Sometimes you find that thing that you connect with and you feel like you have a place there. And so it's really something that I felt comfortable with and I loved exploring. But to let anyone know that was terrifying for me.
Mm.
And now as an adult, I'm like, why did I spend so much time trying to pretend that wasn't who I was? So
Well, you were young,
I was young and
and
impressionable,
you're
yes.
and no, but it's also, look, it's like your sense of self and your identity is emerging, and it's very kind of. Look, how old are your children now?
So I have one who is 19 and in college, and
Okay.
then I have one
Oh
who
wow.
will be 16 next month.
So you can, I'm sure, observing them, you're going to make connections and parallels to how you were at their age. And of course, things are very different now than how they were when we were that age.
Hmm.
And my daughter is 10. So of course, it's really interesting and fascinating to see that biologically, we go through certain developmental stages, and
Hmm.
then how we react within our social groups is, well, it's not necessarily preordained, but it's kind of,
Hmm.
it follows a certain path. And so, don't be so hard on yourself for kind of going from a 200 to 70,000 and feeling overwhelmed, and then retreating into the show that yeah, totally understandable.
It is now. As a kid, I keep trying to tell my kids just be who you are because you're really
Yep.
cool. Like there's only one of you in this entire world. So just
Mm.
know that whoever you are is amazing. So that's what I try and get across
Yep.
to my kids. And of course, there are those certain things they won't wear out in public because while they may love
Hmm.
it, it's like, but I don't feel comfortable letting other people see it.
Right,
I
right,
take
right.
that with a grain of salt because I'm like, I remember the days.
Yep.
And I'm so glad we didn't have Facebook or all that when I was a teenager because, oh my gosh, I wouldn't have been able to handle that. But I chose this photo just because to say,
Okay.
love yourself, let yourself be who you are, and do it with a smile.
Yeah, own it for sure. What you're
Hmm.
doing. Okay, so I have training in philosophy and arts and all this stuff, and then
Okay.
that's why when you say you like Star Trek Next Generation, like, yeah, of course, because that was very philosophical. It was kind of
Hmm.
like popular philosophy. I loved the show. I totally
Hmm.
loved the show. We watched it very faithfully. But in terms of your process,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
you go to a trade show. Like, how do these events sit in your brain in terms of how you put yourself into the world?
So my books, I have historical fiction, I have a sci-fi novella, I have my fantasy series, and I just like to put myself out there. I love talking to different people and being like, "What's your favorite genre to read? Oh, have you read this recently? That's really good." And then when I speak about
Mm,
my books, I try and tap into that. This is really kind of Arthurian mythology mixed in with some adventures in Narnia and Harry Potter to kind of evoke that sense of, oh, okay, I can relate to that. So I,
mm-hmm.
I just love speaking with other people who are enthusiastic about books and reading because I've always been a huge reader and I enjoy
Sure.
talking about that with other people and then relating that to what I'm doing. Like, these are my influences, and this is kind of where this book, you can kind of see elements of this in there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, because I just read a book and it was about cartographers. And it really had a
Okay.
sense of like the Da Vinci Code in it, but not nearly as
Yep.
intense as the Da Vinci Code, but it had those vibes. So I love talking about the different vibes that people get from reading different books. And it's just a fun exchange of bookish nerdiness and knowledge. And that's what I love about doing these different trade shows or conferences is it's not
Sure.
just about selling books, it's about meeting all these other people,
Yeah, finding your people.
finding the people.
So when Or has this ever happened where somebody came to you and was just, the connection was so strong, either because they had read your book already or because they just really aligned and really clicked with what you were saying?
There has been a few times. I've had one person who said, "Oh, I've seen your books. I've read your book." I'm not the most
Oh,
recognizable author yet, but just hearing that was such a thrill. It made my
of
year.
course, for
Um,
sure.
but yeah, there's some people who's like, "Oh, did you read this and did you watch this?" And we could just sit there and talk about all these fun things that we're experiencing, and we're just I've had it a few times where, yeah, you can just sit and talk. I want to be like, pull up a chair. I got an extra one. You can sit here and talk with me all day.
Right. Sure.
And yeah, that's just one of those perks of being at those events is that people are there because they love books, they love reading, and they love the type of books that you're writing. That's why they stop and talk.
Mm-hmm.
So, writing can be a lot of writers are very shy and very introverted. I'm not so
Mm-hmm.
much. I was a theater major in college, so I'm always like, "Come
Okay.
on,
Okay.
friend, let's start talking to people," and so I'm usually the one who kind of gets all the conversations going sometimes. So
Nice.
yeah, I like having people come over and just talking books. It's fun. So
Yeah, for sure. And I can totally see how getting out there and meeting the people, meeting other fellow people, just share what you have in common, can be very nourishing and very validating. Now, I'm just going to try to pull back now. So in the four series of the images you have, so we've got the the tiny library, which I think is just so sweet, and it's anchored in Lord of the Rings, or
mhm.
so it's a little Hobbit home, very nice. And then we go on to the book cover of the four silhouettes with this like bold dragon and bold sort of scene. And then we've got a woman's place in the resistance. And then we've got you at this trade show. So how do you wrap this up in a way that somebody who's listening can feel a kind of call to action to kind of do something for themselves?
So I think what my pictures convey when I really think about what I sent to you is it's really a journey, and
Mm-hmm.
let yourself be on that journey. Enjoy the journey. If you need, some encouragement, like I said, find that writing community, connect with people. Don't let yourself be alone in this process because
Mm-hmm.
there are editors, there are publishers, there are agents. Put yourself out there because your journey is pretty cool. No one else has
Mm-hmm.
experienced that journey. And really tap into who you are, what you love. Like, I love
Mm-hmm.
this stuff. This is a part of what made me who I am. My experiences in a small town, my experiences in a big town. My
Right.
experiences learning to love that nerd in myself and tap into that. So, really just take that journey, let yourself be forgiving of yourself, be
Mm-hmm.
accepting of yourself. Don't be too hard on yourself in this journey and find your voice and let people hear it. Let it go out there into the world and be proud of what you've said.
Beautifully said.
Thank
Look,
you.
no, it's great. It's great. So I love what you said. Very much. It's totally inspiring, totally aligned with the podcast. And so just one more time, so people can know where to find you on the bookshelves. Where should they go to find your work?
Well, you can certainly go to Amazon. Again, my author name J Lynn Else, ELSE, just like or else or what else. Super easy.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, there's inklingpublishing.com, who is my publisher. They have my kind of Awakenings Avalon series. Otherwise, the other books, my historical fiction and the sci-fi, is just on Amazon. They're self-published. Again,
Yeah.
that was part of that process is finding my voice, publishing it, and then getting out there and connecting with other people. So you can find me and my name on Instagram, Twitter, like I've mentioned, TikTok. I'm either Jalen Else or I am Tea Sippin' Nerdy Mom.
Okay, tea sipping nerdy mom. On that note, thank you so much. That's awesome.
Thank you. I've had a lot of fun. Thanks for chatting with me and a little bit of my crazy. I appreciate the conversation.
I'm all about putting the spotlight on how people make sense of the world. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
Shooting it raw?
Yes.